What gets you excited to watch a game of Smash? Sparkling, inescapable combos and the dismantling of a stock? Hours and hours of intense practice that culminate in mesmerizing movement? How about a player betting it all, putting their tournament run on the line for that one big read? These are the kinds of things that make players like Mars, Light, and Cola crowd pleasers that attract die-hard fans no matter where they go. Some people simply enjoy a player showcasing sheer dominance, a performance so polished and pristine that you can't help but appreciate the lack of mistakes and ability to always stay a step ahead. It's why we view players like MKLeo, Armada, and our local number ones with such reverence. Their commanding reigns over gold medals simply demonstrate an unmatched dedication that you can't fault with sincerity. It doesn't always have to be the gameplay either. Low-tier heroes like Triple R and Peanut are beloved for their dedication to notoriously lackluster characters, but week after week continue to fight their good fight. Players like Mango and Yanni, of course, are cherished not only for high-level gameplay, but also their magnetic personalities. All of these things are pretty apparent if you've ever watched any of those players, and it's easy to latch onto. But to me, the incredible room for expressing yourself through your playstyle is what I find truly engrossing. It's not unique to Smash, sure, but few places get to let that idea shine better. And sometimes, the most intriguing examples have been hiding in plain sight for years, where you never even bothered to look. In 2009, a 16-year-old named Samuel Busby would bring home a $3,000 check that he earned from a brawl tournament. You'd think that kind of result alone would turn some heads, but it was really only enough to prove to his parents that it was worthwhile for him to continue playing. Anyone involved in competitive Smash would know him as Dabuz, and he was pretty well established locally in his home of Long Island as a powerful player, but considerable placements at renowned tournaments in the tri-state region didn't rocket him to stardom among regional contemporaries like Nairo and ADHD. Seemingly then, the problem was his inability to travel to national tournaments, where all eyes would be on the names that placed deep in the bracket. But not even that was enough. A 13th place finish at Apex 2012, tying with Japanese powerhouses Brood and Rain, along with the already legendary Mewtwo King, was drowned out by more than a few things, including Otori's stunning debut in America. For Dabuz in particular, eyes traveled elsewhere largely thanks to Niatono piloting the same character as him, Olimar, to second place. See, Dabuz didn't have any of those X factors that tend to turn heads. There was no flashy playstyle, no low-tier mystique, or eye-catching antics. He didn't explode onto the competitive scene with a shocking performance in front of the world either. Even his solid performances among the best players in the world led to just that, a solid reputation. Over time, Dabuz just quietly became a respectable, high-level player that everyone knew about, but largely he stayed amid the fog during story time. Now, playing a character like Olimar wouldn't do Dabuz any favors in gaining notoriety and engrossing an audience either. Olimar has a tendency to perform best at a distance and turn a boxing match into a game of chess. And, of course, that's taking place in a platform fighter. Most people tune in for a slugfest, and they're more than willing to express their disappointment in the face of a different product. Even while climbing as far as number one in other games, his gameplay still didn't captivate the masses. And for Dabuz, all of that was fine. In fact, for someone quiet and reserved by self-admission, I'm sure he even preferred it that way. But he was good. So why does he only earn a passing glance or, at most, a brief nod of respect, even when we watch his gameplay today? Well, more than anything else we've mentioned, it's his playstyle. People tend to describe what they enjoy watching as offensive gameplay and what bores them as defensive, or, in layman's terms, campy. More accurately, I think people are entertained by the game state advancing forward and dislike seeing it slowed down. In that way, the line between offense and defense can blur easily. But what I'm interested in, and what drives Dabuz, isn't necessarily on the lines of offense and defense. See, there's a different kind of beauty in watching someone like Dabuz exhaustively thwart someone's game plan and push them back to square one. It's like watching someone try to drive up an icy driveway and you can't help but root for the ice to win somehow. To appreciate it, we're going to talk about an entirely different scale of playstyles. One that's different from the usual offense and defense, and deeply rewards an understanding of every small detail of the game. Let's dive into the world of initiating and preventing. See, offense and defense are very broad ideas that tend to define the position of the game state more than anything. Like, who's in the advantage or the disadvantage, or who has control of the pace of the match. On the other hand, initiation and prevention have a greater focus on how the players try to change the game state's position. In that way, it widens your vision from where the game state is to how it got there. It opens room to adapt to both the matchup and the player. Therefore, a key part of playing in these boundaries is having finely practiced combos loaded in the chamber when it's time to pull the trigger, while using one's active brain power to line up a target for the critical shot. This is why Dabuz gets the marquee spot in this video. The point isn't to deck the halls of his impressive career, because that's a story for another time and another place. The point is that there is no better example, no better champion of this overlooked playstyle than the guy with one of the longest tenured yet least romanticized Smash careers of all time, especially given his level of success. The true magical draw of watching Dabuz play is that he is a master of prevention. Watch the rhythm of the game when he plays and you'll get a pretty good picture of what prevention-based play looks like. For the vast majority of any given game, his pace remains steady, a firm but flexible pace that seems to stay unbothered, whether it's in the face of a raging thunderstorm or completely windless winter weather. Unlike a meteorologist, however, Dabuz always seems to be able to control the weather to some degree. Whether he makes his offensive presence known, uses his flexibility to make his opponents think twice, or just stands completely still, one thing is apparent. His gameplay perfectly encapsulates the idea of prevention. Make it as hard as possible for the opponent to execute their game plan, and pare down their viable options until risk-reward is heavily tipped in his favor. As you might expect, this has a good amount of use for a defensive style, placing bricks and mortar in the path of your opponent and taking advantage of the ensuing bruises. Prevention is also exceptionally potent on offense as well, though. If you continually block off possible escape routes as your opponent attempts to duck past your advance, you can continually apply safe pressure while they're locked down, with movement and attacks alike, until someone makes a mistake. The prevention style's credence is to create a steady, safe game state, and avoid rocking the boat too much. Rather than trying to force the opponent to make more mistakes that hurt more, the focus is to widen your own margin of error and make the errors hurt less. In other words, take smaller hits and take them less often. We'll watch some prevention and initiation in action in a minute, but there's one thing I want to look at first. We have a great opportunity to see how it affects overall results, and a case of princely regicide at the hands of the ultimate initiator. But more crucially, we can regale the tale of how Dabuz became the King of New York. Let's mess with the fabric of reality, and rewind time. Saying the words Apex 2015, that's enough to make any Smash player start waxing poetic. There are a lot of reasons everyone remembers that event, and there is certainly enough to make a long-form video about it. Someone should really get on that. Anyways, for our hero Dabuz, that's no less true. On his run to Grand Finals, it would be the first time he'd take home a prize at least as large as the very catalyst for his pro career, one large enough to nearly double his earnings since then. A cool $3,011. More importantly, it'd be the first time he'd make it to Grand Finals of a tournament this size. When you do that, people are gonna talk about you. And not just because they want to, but because they feel like they have to. When a young player hits it big, everyone wants to be the first to say something. Unfortunately, this also means that a lot of people are gonna say things that don't quite hit the mark. Or most typically, something that's true on the surface, but doesn't really tell the whole story. Even through a shift to the newest Smash title, Dabuz still stuck with that slow, methodical style that many had begun to know him for. The conclusion that plenty of people arrived at was the dreaded C word. Dabuz was camping. And honestly, even his biggest supporters didn't really try to squelch that phrasing, instead trying to shine a light on his peerless defense and intelligence. Eventually, that's exactly what Dabuz began to be known as, a master of defense. Someone who would build an optimized, impregnable fortress and laugh atop his throne as he slowly won wars of attrition. Now, that's not an unfair assessment, and frankly, I won't challenge it. Calling Dabuz a master of defense isn't inaccurate. But becoming a master of prevention is what truly encapsulates why he was able to build an iron castle and become the King of New York. And by the way, people don't tend to hand out a crown for a brief rule. A king is made to stay, and for a place like New York, you better have quite the reign. And, well, Dabuz did indeed stay on top for a while. Shortly after Apex that year, he would enter the #1 spot on the New York City Power Rankings for the first full quarter of 2015, and wouldn't leave it until 2022. To stay on top of a highly competitive region for such a long time speaks to the ridiculous consistency that he possesses. In that 7-year span, Dabuz would only miss top 16 5 times at 114 events with 100 or more entrants. And weirdly, 4 of them were Super Smash Con. In case you're curious, the only other tournament in that list is Frostbite 2019, where he just missed the cut at 17th with losses to that season's PGRU number 15T and number 9 Void. And for all that time as King of New York, it wasn't a decline in skill that had Dabuz surrender the number 1 spot, but rather a combination of 2 other things. First, a lack of appearances at regional tournaments meant he didn't qualify in the first place, but mostly his throne was already in jeopardy thanks to the rise of a certain young player who would soon earn the title of New York's Prince. Welcome in the high schooler that dethroned a king. His name is Zomba. Around the time Dabuz began lording over every tournament in Long Island, a 10-year-old Zomba would start attending small locals on Staten Island, just a stone's throw away from Manhattan. In fact, at 12 years old, he would earn a respectable 129th at Super Smash Con 2018, and by the time Ultimate rolled in later that year, he already had a few small wins under his belt. 2 years later in 2020, local players at the New York Super Major Let's Make Big Moves were raving about how this 14-year-old was the future. LMBM would be a landmark tournament for Zomba, tackling Tony Z Tank, Uncivil Ninja, and Raito, and able to draw blood in 2-1 and 3-1 losses to Goblin and WaDi respectively. He'd drawn quite some attention. His 17th place finish had everyone wondering where a dynamic Roy and Link player not even finished with his freshman year of high school would go next. To that question, I don't have an answer. After lockdown, Zomba did indeed explode out of the lifted gates, but not with Roy or Link. It was as one of the best Rob players in the world, and with it he brought the same playstyle he always shouldered. That would be good old-fashioned initiation. Good God, does Zomba play to initiate. So well known is Zomba for this playstyle that his SSB wiki page even pays mention to his high aggression and unexpected options. It doesn't matter if he's playing a classic initiative character like Roy or ones like Link and Rob that we traditionally think of as zoners. Zomba wants to win games, and he wants to win them on his terms. Frankly, he doesn't care how you want to play the game. You're going to have to deal with him first. It's the classic initiator strategy. Develop extremely powerful tools and use them to absolutely batter your opponent out of their comfort zone. If they get too comfortable, throw something new into the mix. With lightning-fast reflexes, a headstrong demeanor, and a borderline cruel punish game, fighting Zomba is like fighting a tiger with a jetpack. With his meteoric rise, we have a story between him and Dabuz that almost feels too perfect. A king and a prince. A veteran and a rookie. 2 players from the same region who decided as high schoolers nearly a decade apart that they were going to go pro, but with completely different approaches to seemingly everything. While Dabuz lives quiet and reserved, Zomba absolutely farms Twitter impressions. While Dabuz had to bring home thousands of dollars to convince his family to let him pursue Smash, Zomba's parents have said, loosely speaking, he can do whatever he wants so long as he does his homework. And while Dabuz plays to prevent, Zomba plays to initiate. He is the perfect foil to Dabuz in almost every way, and this even goes as far as the 2 being ranked within 2 spots of each other on the PGRU V3 inside the top 10. There's no other way to say it. Aside from skill, each one of this pair is everything that the other isn't. Someday, those paths were going to collide spectacularly. Remember when I said we'd come back to look at some gameplay and really break down prevention and initiation? Yep, it's time. Welcome to the theater, and make yourself comfortable. Tonight's showing is one of the single best sets played in Ultimate this year. Dabuz vs Zomba, Pound 2022, Losers Bracket Top 8 Qualifier. We're gonna swap between Dabuz's prevention and Zomba's initiation a few times, but there's really no better way to compare not only these 2 players, but certainly these 2 playstyles. First and foremost, here's some context. Up until this point, these 2 had never faced each other at a major. Dabuz is 8-1 in those preceding locals and regionals against Zomba, who notched that one and only win just 2 months before at Fusion number 101, but that was against Dabuz's imperfected and now defunct Sora. Now he's facing off against a fully practiced Rosalina, piloted by a fully focused, major prepped Dabuz for the first time. This is the character that defined Dabuz's success in Smash 4, and it is immediately apparent that it still works with his skill set. Luma gives Zamba an obstacle he has to clear before he can start battering Rosalina, and right at the beginning of Game 1, Dabuz hangs behind platforms and uses gravitational pull to reduce the threat of Rob's big aerials and versatile projectiles against Luma. Zamba jumps at a chance to use those tools to clear away Luma, and, well, listen to what J-Dog says here.
Absolutely bullying Luma, and that's kind of what you have to do. The thing is, Luma's kind of a give and take in this matchup because Rob already has hurt or hitboxes that last 8.5 years. And when you add Luma to the mix, like that back air will be as old as Zamba by the time it's finished.
Might be good to remember that. That aside, watch this sequence. From this juggle, Dabuz uses a combination of positioning and a preemptive up air to ensure that Zamba can't drop to either platform and safely put up his shield. If the up air hits, Dabuz continues the juggle. If it whiffs, he's perfectly set up to use a lunar landing forward tilt to cover the two likely scenarios here. The first scenario is that Zamba retreats upon landing. The Luma F-tilt doesn't do anything here, but Dabuz is free to either move to center stage and pile on the pressure, or retreat under the platform and reset to neutral. The second scenario is the one that actually happens. Zamba immediately tries to punish the whiffed up air with a dash attack, hoping to knock away Luma in return for a likely small counter hit. The dash attack whiffs, and after missing the tech on the F-tilt, Dabuz turns it into an early stock. Low risk the whole way through, and extremely high reward in the best case scenario, all by simply preventing Zamba from using the platforms to mix up his landing. That is textbook Dabuz. Zamba only takes one stock with an aerial out of disadvantage, and Dabuz would finish Game 1 with an ambush and a 2-stock drubbing. It's pretty clear Dabuz came prepared for whatever ideas Zamba has about the matchup. But this is Zamba we're talking about. He's not just going to take L's by sticking to the textbooks. Game 2 goes to Town and City, a great counterpick by Zamba for many reasons, and not the least of which is that Dabuz's prevention style is a whole lot less effective here. For example, if platforms are even available at all, Dabuz won't be able to play around them without either committing to his movement or giving up stage control, both scenarios that leave weak spots for Zamba to feast on. For a prevention-based player with a defensive flavor, this stage in this matchup has a miserably small margin for error. All of that being said, it's not all sunshine and roses for the Prince, who continues to struggle in figuring out the matchup. Every time he makes an initiation and some kind of progress, Dabuz's long-revered adaptation pairs perfectly with his prevention to slow him down. A little over 2 minutes into the game, Zamba does what any initiator does in the face of ostensibly everything being stuffed. He takes a breather. It may not be the lively, pressure-heavy initiating you might be used to, but this extra time he takes on the ledge allows him to analyze Dabuz's pace, and eventually barge his way back on stage with this nair. He loses his stock overextending from the stray hit, but now he has a handle on Dabuz's rhythm. This up smash excellently calls out a defensive jump after baiting out a laggy reaction down air, pushing the game to even. And from here, Zamba turns Dabuz's defensive habits inside out to take Game 2. Now, even having taken that game off of brutalizing Dabuz's player habits, Zamba's still trying to figure out the matchup at this point. And as Game 3 goes to small battlefield, he once again has to deal with that Rosalina making the readily available platforms her home for most of the 4-minute game. Dabuz sticking to that game plan keeps the game even going into the game's final moments, where neither player's quite at kill percent yet. Here, a buffered get-up attack knocks Zamba off stage and puts Dabuz in the absolutely perfect spot to cover any attempt for the ledge that Zamba might make. The Prince can't go right down there, but thankfully for him, Rob has quite a few tools for these situations. He attempts a laser to hit Dabuz away from the ledge, or at the very least force him to retreat, but it whiffs. With projectiles unavailable, Zamba falls back to something simpler. He busts out Rob's up B and ignores the whole ledge trap, free as a bird. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world. What Zamba thought was a totally safe recovery away from a seemingly placid ledge-trapping Dabuz was actually playing right into his hands. Knowing that he had the ledge perfectly covered and had spent the better part of 3 games trapping Zamba there, Dabuz knew that as long as he could prevent an avenue from opening, Zamba would eventually recover high. Jumping over the laser rather than shielding it or committing to gravitational pull means that he's not left vulnerable, and landing near the ledge remains unsafe for Zamba. Unsafe, but by no means impossible, and yet Dabuz knew he'd gotten into Zamba's head enough that this high recovery was a likely scenario, and he was ready to strike when the opportunity was presented. In Game 4, Zamba once again makes use of baits and deciphering of defensive tendencies to even up the set, and by this point it's becoming apparent that Zamba's figuring out how to handle Rosa. Game 5 goes back to Pokemon Stadium 2, where Dabuz rocked Zamba in Game 1. But this time, well, things feel different now. Zamba finally has some solid footing, and he can really play his own style. With both players shifted into top gear, it could go either way. Zamba uses a B-reverse laser to instantly vaporize Luma and send Rosalina hurtling off stage. Despite risking a loss of stage control, he correctly reads Dabuz's defensive jump, as he's done the whole set, and sets up for an arm rotor off stage. Not to be outdone, Dabuz also summons a blast from the past on the next stock. He keeps his positioning fluid to prevent a quick escape from Zamba and finishes his plate with a 1-2 punch of up airs. It's been 20 minutes of back and forth gameplay, and finally, it's one stock apiece in Game 5. The next one determines who gets to sit on the throne in the Big Apple. After another back-breaking minute and a half, both players can clearly feel the stakes. Pushed to 152%, Dabuz has no room to get cute. He is fully committed to this style of prevention. Zamba knows this too. If he doesn't stick to his guns, he might just trip over his own feet right when things were starting to look up. Everything is on the line here, more than just a spot in top 8. Pushed off stage with no double jump, Dabuz launches himself straight to the ledge. Zamba wagers every last chip.
Facts. The gyro has, or excuse me, Dabuz has gyro in hand. He's gonna get hit. He doesn't have a jump. This could be it.
I'll take
the side B.
Wait a minute!
Wait,
what are we doing down here? There's the up air!
Luma extended the hitbox! Luma extended the hitbox at the very end to give a neutral get up. Oh my god, I'm about to pass out.
Dabuz knew, for all intents and purposes, that he had to go to the ledge. And he recovered at an angle where Zamba wouldn't be able to get off stage in time to cover with an arm rotor or forward air towards the blast zone. Zamba, initiator he is, knows that this is his best opportunity though, and he needs something. And an arm rotor under the stage guarantees that he won't whiff and lose the game outright. However, this opens up the way for Dabuz to tech, and given the ending lag of arm rotor, it's a guaranteed path back to the ledge. He's chosen medium risk, low reward instead of going above the ledge at high risk, medium reward. And the strange part is, it should have worked. The invincibility from neutral getup should have lasted long enough to escape Zamba's double jump up air, where he could have dropped the gyro into a down air and walked away victorious. But one wayward Luma blew all of that up, and Zamba carved his path into top 8. A lot of people will probably say that he up-aired the Luma on purpose for this exact scenario. I really don't think anyone's gonna buy that, especially since Zamba himself said that he was just trying to catch Dabuz's recovery. Regardless of whether or not extending his hitbox on Luma was intentional though, the fact remains that Zamba took the initiative to throw out the up air, knowing that Dabuz was playing with an impossibly small margin of error. The smallest stroke of luck could win him the game, and that's exactly what happened. The commentator J-Dog even mentioned this exact scenario in the first 30 seconds of the set, 20 minutes before this final moment. And despite all the stakes, 5 entire games, and some of the best demonstrations of prevention and initiation you'll ever find in a single set, this is the moment that people remember. But honestly, maybe that moment was the moment to remember. In a weird way, it defines prevention and initiation. For Dabuz, if everything had gone as it should have on paper, he probably gets back to ledge and wins the game. For Zamba, all he needed was one little lucky break, and he put himself in a great position to get it. Prevention tries to expand the margin for error as wide as it can get, and initiation will shrink the margin as small as can be. Preventative play does its best to stay inside the margin, and initiative play will do its best to shove you out of it. But these styles, they're not something you choose. It's the kind of thing that chooses you as you learn to play. In other words, even as you shift between them, they're the result of how you instinctively want to apply what you've practiced and learned. The constant dance of prevention and initiation is the inherent essence of expression in one's playstyle. It's why this idea is something that high-level players intuitively understand, live and die by, even if they've never thought about it once. Dabuz has yet to grab a defining major win in Smash Ultimate, and while he's still one of Ultimate's most consistent players, that's the perfect image of the prevention-based playstyle. It's an absolute godsend in helping avoid unexpected losses, but you won't often find an unexpected win. Zamba? Well, he's gone through his share of peaks and valleys like you might expect of a full-on initiator. But hey, the kid's not even out of high school yet. The best is surely to come for him, and you can rest assured the grizzled true king of New York will be right there alongside him too. For the rest of us, well, we might think about our own expression of play a little bit differently. Maybe even try to analyze our favorite players or guess the outcome of matches before they happen. Honestly though, I'm not really all that concerned about predicting the future. I'd rather take it as it comes. I mean, this is just my weird fascination with a couple of playstyles that are just different from what we're used to appreciating. It's really just one little thing that makes me smile when I tune into a tournament. And hey, at the end of the day, that's really all I need. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Kimona, and I actually wrote this script. So I want to take a second to shout out particularly the PGstats lead producer Bobby Wasabi and our lead writer Jackie Peanuts for really just being an impossibly huge amount of help for getting this off the ground. I mean, this is something that I've wanted to tell a story about for a while. I really didn't have a way to do it, and those two not only made sure that it was ready to put on this channel and make it a project that I could be proud of, but seriously, they just made it something that it could not have been without their help. And of course, Astro, who actually edited this video, God, just did an amazing job. So really give your appreciation to either of those three the next time you see them. But with that out of the way, guess we'll sign off. I've been Kimona, and from all of us here at PGstats, we thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.